The island of Sodor is surrounded by beautiful blue sea. It has fields of green and sandy yellow beaches. There are rivers, streams and lots of trees where the birds sing. There are windmills and a coal mine and docks where visitors to the island arrive. The island also has lots and lots of railway lines. Who's that puffing down the track? It's Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the island of Sodor. Thomas and the jet plane. Thomas the tank engine loves having buffers and a boiler that bubbles. He loves having wheels and a whistle that toots. But most of all, Thomas loves working on the Fat Controller's railway. It was the day of the Sodor summer picnic. The Fat Controller came with news of a special for Thomas.
You are to collect the children from the airport and take them to the picnic,
he boomed cheerfully.
Thomas was excited.
He set off right away. The airport was new and all the engines wanted to go there. Soon Thomas arrived at the airport. He was excited to see the control tower, the huge hangar and the red and white striped windsock. Then he heard a loud noise in the sky. A jet plane was coming in to land. Thomas thought it looked very splendid. Thomas chuffed over to the hangar. Hello, peeped Thomas. I'm Thomas and I'm a tank engine.
Hello, said the plane. I'm Jeremy and I'm a jet plane.
It must be wonderful being able to fly, said Thomas.
It is, said Jeremy. I can go anywhere I want. Flying is the most fun in the world.
Thomas thought Jeremy was being boastful. I like travelling on tracks, Thomas huffed. I puff past farms and villages and see all the wonderful sights of Sodor.
Well, from the air I see the wonderful sights of Sodor all at once, said Jeremy.
Thomas felt upset. Then he saw the children. They were waiting on the platform. Thomas reached quickly over to collect them. I never want to talk to a jet plane again, he huffed. Thomas puffed over to the picnic. He was happy to leave the airport behind. But when he turned a bend in the track, he had to stop at a signal. Thomas heard Jeremy taking off, and then Jeremy flew right over his funnel. It's not fair, huffed Thomas. Jet planes don't have to stop at signals. Thomas puffed past the windmill, but Thomas could still see Jeremy. He was now high in the sky. Suddenly, Thomas saw a cow on the tracks in front of him. Jet planes don't have to stop for cows, Thomas puffed sadly. Thomas arrived at the picnic. The blankets were laid out and everyone was having a jolly time. But Percy thought Thomas looked sad. Jet planes can go wherever they like. I wish I were a jet plane, chuffed Thomas.
But engines can pull carriages and take children to picnics,
peeped Percy.
Engines are really useful.
But Thomas wasn't sure. Jeremy was jetting to the mainland, but dark rain clouds were gathering. And Jeremy had to return to the airport. Thomas was passing the airport as Jeremy came into land. Thomas didn't want to talk to him, but Jeremy called out,
Thomas, a summer storm is on its way. The children's picnic will be ruined.
Cinders and ashes, gasped Thomas. I must tell the Fat Controller. Thomas reached the picnic just in time. Quick, tooted Thomas. There's a big storm coming. The picnic will be washed away. Everyone packed up the picnic as quickly as possible. And then they boarded Annie and Clarabelle. The children were sad the picnic was over. Then another idea flew into Thomas's funnel. He puffed quickly back to the airport. This time Thomas wanted to talk to Jeremy. Please, can the children have their picnic in your hangar?
Of course, said Jeremy. What a splendid idea.
Thomas was very happy. Soon all the children were having a jolly time. And so was the Fat Controller. Well done, Thomas and Jeremy, he boomed. Together you have saved the picnic. You are both really useful. Jeremy was happy to have helped. And Thomas had never felt prouder to be a steam engine. A smooth ride. Sir Handel is one of the oldest engines on the island of Sodor. He's a dark blue colour and has a small number 3 painted on his side. Sir Handel is also known as one of the smoothest engines on the Thin Controller's railway. Sir Handel had been working in the stone quarry all summer. The Thin Controller, Mr. Percival, was happy to see him back.
I've got a special for you,
Mr. Percival told Sir Handel.
I want you to collect some trucks of apples. You must pull them very carefully or the apples will bruise.
Yes, sir, whooshed Sir Handel, and off he chuffed. At the orchard, Sir Handel was coupled to the trucks. He pulled them away very carefully. He pulled them around the lake, across the stone bridge, and he started to puff up a hill. Then there was trouble. His pistons popped, his traction rods rattled, and his boiler bubbled and bounced. Sir Handel couldn't go on. Peter Sam puffed up behind him. He was worried. "Why have you stopped, Sir Handel?" he whistled. "I have a problem," wheezed Sir Handel sadly. "It happens when I go up hills. I start to rattle and rock, and then I have to stop." Peter Sam felt sorry for his friend.
"Could you help me up the hill?" puffed Sir Handel. "Of course I can," peeped Peter San. And he pushed Sir Handel and the trucks of apples all the way up the hill. When Sir Handel arrived at the station, the Thin Controller was very pleased. "There's not one bruise on those apples," said the Thin Controller. "What a smooth engine you are." Sir Handel was happy that the Thin Controller was pleased, so he didn't tell the Thin Controller about his problem. "Now I have another special for you," said the Thin Controller. "I want you to pick up sheep from the farm." "Yes, sir," puffed Sir Handel, but he was worried. When Sir Handel arrived at the farmer was waiting. "Be careful," said the farmer. "Sheep need a smooth ride." "Yes, sir," chuffed Sir Handel, and he puffed away. But soon Sir Handel came to another hill. His pistons popped, his traction rods rattled, and his boiler bubbled and bounced. Sir Handel couldn't go on. This time, Duncan puffed up behind him. Sir Handel told him all about his problem. Duncan was happy to help. With Duncan's help, Sir Handel delivered the sheep safely to their new field. When Sir Handel arrived at the transfer yards, the Thin Controller and Mrs. Percival were waiting. The Thin Controller was very pleased with Sir Handel's work. Now he had a surprise special for him. "Today is my wife's birthday," said the Thin Controller. "You are to take us to the top of Culdee Fell for a picnic." "Yes, sir," puffed Sir Handel. But he knew that the track to Culdee Fell was very steep. Sir Handel was more worried than ever. Sir Handel puffed towards Culdee Fell. The track was even steeper than he remembered. "I can do it, to the top, he chuffed. Then there was trouble. His pistons popped and his traction rods rattled. Inside the carriage, the picnic hamper burst open and the Thin Controller and Mrs. Percival were juddered and shuddered. Sir Handel shuddered to a stop. The Thin Controller was worried for his engine. "You're a fine engine, Sir Handel, but you're no longer a smooth engine," he said. "I'll have to send you back to the stone quarry. That's the place for bumpy engines." "Please, sir, I can be a smooth engine. I only shudder and shake when I go up hills," Sir Handel wished. The Thin Controller listened. "I see," he said. "Please don't send me back to the stone quarry." The Thin Controller made a telephone call. He looked very serious. Later, Sir Handel was helped back to the transfer yards by Mighty Mac. Sir Handel was very worried. He was sure that the Thin Controller was going to send him back to the quarry. Sir Handel arrived at the transfer yards. He saw Thomas. "Hello, Sir Handel," tooted Thomas. "Sir Handel, I've asked a special engineer to come and fix you," smiled the Thin Controller. "You're a special engine and you need special attention." Sir Handel smiled from buffer to buffer. He had never felt happier. Sir Handel was soon fixed, and now he could chuff cheerfully up Culdee Fell. The children in his carriages whooped and cheered. Sir Handel gave the smoothest ride of all. Follow that flower.
Every day is a busy day for the engines of the Thin Controller's railway. They toot hello as they pass each other on the hills. Huff and puff at the transfer yards. And push and pull trucks at the wharf. Early one morning, Thomas was at the wharf. He liked the wharf. It was busy and he met a lot of friends there. But today, Thomas was shunting trucks, and the trucks were being especially troublesome. It was taking all of Thomas's puff to keep them in order. Then James arrived. "I am to collect a truck of flour to make cakes and bread for the Children's Harvest Festival supper," tooted James. "I wish the Fat Controller had given me that job," chuffed Thomas. "It would be much more fun than shunting trucks." James was feeling very pleased with himself. "First, I have to take on water," he whistled grandly. "Please shunt the flour truck over for me, Thomas." Thomas didn't want to shunt any more trucks. This meant his job would go on for even longer. "Bossy boiler," he puffed. Thomas found the flour truck outside the warehouse. He wanted to move James's truck as quickly as he could, so Thomas wasn't taking care. He biffed the truck very hard, and the door came loose. But Thomas didn't see. An idea had flown into his funnel. "I'll hide James's truck, then Bossy Boiler will have to find me." Thomas thought hide and seek was a grand idea. James came back from the water tower. He saw Thomas in the distance. And James saw that falling from the truck was a trail of flour. "Stop, Thomas!" whistled James. "Flour is falling out of your truck." But Thomas was too far away to hear. Thomas puffed into the warehouse to find somewhere to hide. More and more flour fell from the truck. James chased after Thomas. Thomas heard him coming. "How does he know where I am?" thought Thomas. "Thomas, the flour!" whistled James. But Thomas couldn't hear him. "James won't find me this time," he thought. Thomas was having fun. Thomas found another good place to hide. "James will never find me here," he hooted happily. But then he heard James's whistle again. "Bust my buffers," chuffed Thomas. "He's found me again." So Thomas puffed off. Thomas had reversed behind some trucks. "James will never find me here," he tooted cheerily. But just then he saw James come around the bend. "Thomas," puffed James. He was very cross. "You've left a trail of flour all over the wharf." "Cinders and ashes," cried Thomas. "I must have biffed the truck so hard that the door came loose." Thomas didn't feel cheery anymore. "If I've lost all the flour, there'll be no cakes and bread for the Children's Harvest Festival supper," he wheezed sadly. "I'm sorry, James," he chuffed. "I'll get you another truck of flour. Then you won't be late for the children." Thomas raced away. Thomas puffed and he huffed. He wheeshed and he whooshed. He had to get to the mill as fast as he could. Then there was trouble. When Thomas arrived at the mill, it was closed. Thomas looked around. He could only see empty flour trucks. Thomas felt sadder than ever. Dusty Dave the miller came to see Thomas. He could see that Thomas was very upset.
I'm going home for my tea now, he told Thomas. But there's one full flour truck right at the back. Thomas saw the flour truck. But there were lots of other trucks in the way. He needed help. Thomas whooshed back to the wharf. He would have to ask James to help him. James was waiting. He was still very cross. Thomas pulled up alongside him. James, I know you tried to tell me about the flour, and I know I was silly, but now I need your help. James knew that Thomas was sorry, and he knew Thomas needed his help. So they set off for the mill. James and Thomas worked hard. There were lots of trucks to shunt, but they worked well together. The flour truck was coupled up to James, and he raced off. Thomas felt proud of his friend. Later that evening, the Fat Controller stood by a table of wonderful breads and cakes. The children were very excited. Thomas puffed by on his way home. "Well done, James," he tooted, and James tooted back. Thomas was pleased James was his friend again. And Thomas smiled all the way back to Tidmouth Sheds. Sticky Toffee Thomas. It was summertime on the island of Sodor. The engines were very busy. The children were having a big fancy dress party, and there were lots of jobs to do. Percy collected the cakes and buns. Toby collected some sticky toffee to make toffee apples. And Thomas took the tables and chairs. When Thomas delivered the tables and chairs, he saw some children. They were making fancy dress costumes. "That looks fun," tooted Thomas. Then the Fat Controller spoke to Thomas. "I would like you to give train rides at the party," the Fat Controller said. "But first, you must go to the washdown so you look your best." Thomas was delighted. He loved giving the children train rides. Thomas puffed to the washdown. He was thinking about the children and their fancy dress costumes. "I want to go to the party in fancy dress too," chuffed Thomas. "Then I would really look my best." Thomas was soon covered in soapy suds. He was scrubbed and rubbed, rubbed and scrubbed. Then Percy arrived at the washdown. "You look like a giant bubble," peeped Percy. "That's it," puffed Thomas. "I'll go to the party as a giant bubble." So Thomas puffed quickly away, still covered in bubbles. He couldn't wait to show the children his fancy dress. Then there was trouble. The bubbles blew into his eyes. Thomas couldn't see where he was going, and he bumped straight into the back of Toby. Toby's axle was broken. "Sorry," puffed Thomas. Soon the Fat Controller arrived. "Toby, you must go to the yard to be repaired," said the Fat Controller. "If I don't take the sticky toffee to the party, the children won't be able to make toffee apples," moaned Toby. "Please, sir," puffed Thomas, "I could take the sticky toffee to the party."
"Very well," said the Fat Controller, "but no more trying to be in fancy dress." Soon all the soapy bubbles were cleaned off Thomas, and he puffed away.
"I must get the sticky toffee to the children on time," Thomas puffed.
But he started to think about fancy dress again.
Thomas puffed up to the airport. And there, on the runway, was Jeremy the jet. "That's it," chuffed Thomas. "I would look grand if I arrived at the party as an aeroplane." Thomas watched Jeremy zoom up into the sky. He thought about his costume for the party. He thought about it for a very long time. "Oh no, I've been daydreaming," chuffed Thomas, "and now I'm late." Thomas puffed as fast as he could, but he wasn't watching where he was going. Thomas didn't notice that the points had been changed. Thomas puffed into the sidings and biffed into the buffers. Sticky toffee splattered everywhere. "Oh no," moaned Thomas. "I can't give the children train rides when I'm this messy. If only I'd been thinking about what I was doing." Then Thomas saw an old line. This gave him an idea. "A shortcut," puffed Thomas. "If I go that way, I can still get the toffee to the party on time." Thomas puffed along the old line. It hadn't been used for a very long time. Trees hung over the track, and the bushes were overgrown. But Thomas puffed carefully on. He knew he was late, so now he wasn't thinking about fancy dress. He was only thinking about getting to the party on time. Thomas bumped through the bushes and bashed through the branches, but he was still covered in sticky toffee. Leaves and twigs stuck to the sweet sticky goo. "Must get to the party, must get to the party," Thomas puffed. When Thomas arrived at the party, he was covered from funnel to footplate in leaves and twigs. Everyone cheered when they saw him. "I've brought you the toffee," Thomas puffed sadly, "but I'm too messy to give you train rides." The children cheered. "You're not messy, you're just in fancy dress. You look best of all." Thomas was very happy. The party was a great success, and there was only one thing more popular than the sticky toffee apples, and that was Sticky Toffee Thomas. Duncan drops a clanger. It was a busy time on the narrow gauge railway. It was the day of the country fair. The little engines puffed through the forests and valleys, getting ready for the big day. Rusty was taking trucks full of flowers. Peter Sam was taking pumpkins. And Duncan had a very special job to do. He had to collect the big bell from the clock tower to be polished. On the way, Duncan puffed along an old and bumpy track. It was his favourite part of the railway. Each day, Duncan would rattle along the tracks. He enjoyed the sound his wheels made.
Duncan raced backwards and forwards, rattling and clattering over the bumps. Rheneas chuffed up.
Duncan, you're going to be late, he peeped.
But Duncan didn't hear Rheneas. His wheels were clattering and rattling too loudly. When Duncan finally arrived at the transfer yards, he was very late, and the foreman was cross. Workmen were waiting with a large wooden frame. Inside was the big bell. The bell chimed cheerfully as it was loaded onto Duncan's flatbed. "What a wonderful sound!" peeped Duncan. "Remember," said the foreman sternly, "the bell is very heavy. The track to the polishers is old and in need of some repair. You must go slowly and carefully." But Duncan wasn't listening to the foreman. He was enjoying the chiming of the bell. Duncan chuffed along the track to the polishers. As he puffed through the mountains, his wheels started to clatter, and the bell started to chime. Duncan went faster. The bell chimed louder. With every bump and bend, it rattled and rang, it tinkled and clanged. Duncan liked the sound of this even more than the sound of his wheels. He was having a wonderful time. Whee! He wheeshed, and the bell rang louder and louder. "Slow down," called Rusty. But Duncan didn't hear. "Hooray!" Duncan hooted. "Take care," chuffed Skarloey. "Whoosh!" whooped Duncan. "The bell will come loose," puffed Mighty Mac. But still Duncan didn't listen. He rattled on. The track was getting bumpier, and the bell chimed louder. Sir Handel was taking on water. He saw Duncan racing towards him. "Hooray!" whistled Duncan. "Slow down," hooted Sir Handel. "The track ahead is very wobbly." "Listen to my bell, Sir Handel," whooshed Duncan. "Isn't it wonderful?" Then there was trouble. Duncan's wheels rattled over the wobbly track. He applied his brakes, but it was too late. The flatbed bumped into the air, the bell tumbled off the flatbed and rolled down the hill. Clang, clang, boing went the bell as it fell and fell. "Oh no," cried Duncan. "I've lost the bell. Now it won't be polished for the country fair," he puffed sadly. "It's all my fault." Everywhere was still and quiet. Then Duncan heard a noise. "That sounds like a bell," he wished quietly, and he listened very hard. "It is a bell," he tooted. "It's my bell. Maybe if I listen and follow the sound," Duncan puffed, "I will find the bell." Duncan followed the sound. "It's getting louder," he puffed excitedly. At last, Duncan could see the bell. It was caught in a tree. The wind blew gently and the bell chimed sweetly. Duncan raced down the hill and he arrived just in time. The branch snapped and the bell fell onto his flatbed.
Hooray! Chuffed Duncan. He was very happy. Duncan puffed to the polishers. This time he puffed slowly and carefully, just as he had been told. Soon the bell was polished and Duncan chuffed slowly and carefully all the way back to the transfer yard. Duncan delivered the shiny bell just in time. And when the clock chimed for the opening of the country fair, Duncan thought it was the best sound he had ever heard. Seeing the sights. There are lots of wonderful sights to see on the island of Sodor. One summer's day, Thomas was given a very special job. "Thomas," said the Fat Controller, "you are to collect some very important visitors from the mainland. They are arriving at Brendam Docks." "Yes, sir," tooted Thomas happily. "I will show them all the sights on Sodor." Thomas puffed happily towards Brendam Docks. Thomas pulled up at the gangplank. "Welcome aboard," he tooted. "I will show you all the wonderful sights of Sodor." Just then, Gordon steamed in. "I should be showing the sights to the important visitors," he sniffed. "Why?" huffed Thomas. "Because," wheezed Gordon, "I could show them round much more quickly than you. Then they would see everything there is to see on Sodor." Thomas was cross. "I can show them all the sights just as quickly as you can," he whistled. "Just you see." Thomas heard carriage doors slam. Everyone's on board, he thought, and he chuffed away as quickly as he could. "So much to see, so much to see. Let's get a move on, count on me." Then there was trouble. Thomas had left some of the visitors behind. Later, Thomas had to wait at a signal. Bertie the bus drove up. He had picked up the visitors Thomas had left behind. Bertie honked his horn, but the signal had changed, and Thomas puffed away. Thomas was in a hurry. "Silly tank engine," parped Bertie. "I will have to chase after you." The children on board Bertie thought a chase was great fun. Thomas arrived at Black Lock. "Everyone out to see the seals," he tooted. "Hurry up, hurry up." The visitors took their cameras to see Black Lock. Thomas had to wait. He didn't like waiting. He had to show the visitors all the sights. "Otherwise," he thought, "I won't be as fast as Gordon." "Time to go," he peeped loudly. Thomas heard a carriage door slam. Everyone must be on board, he thought, and Thomas chuffed away as fast as he could. But Thomas had left more of the visitors behind. Soon Thomas arrived at the Scottish castle. "Everyone out," he peeped. "Hurry up, hurry up." Then Thomas had to wait again. He wheezed some steam, and he started to worry. "We'll never see everything if we don't hurry up," Thomas wheezed. "Everyone back on board, please." Just then, Gordon steamed in. "Flatten my funnel," sniffed Gordon. "You haven't seen many sights." "Yes, we have, and we're going to see more," huffed Thomas. He was cross. He puffed away as quickly as he could. But more visitors were left behind. Thomas steamed in to the fishing village. "Here's the next sight," he puffed. "Everybody out, please." But Thomas couldn't hear any carriage doors opening. He was puzzled. Just then Bertie arrived. "What's happening?" asked Thomas. "No one's getting out, Thomas," beeped Bertie, "because no one is left on board." Thomas was surprised. "Cinders and ashes," gasped Thomas. "You were in so much of a hurry, you left them all behind." Thomas was upset. "I must go back and pick everyone up." But first he collected the visitors from Bertie the bus, and he steamed back to the castle. He picked up his passengers and puffed quickly back to Black Lock. With all the visitors on board, Thomas set off again. Thomas had to stop at a junction. He looked at the view of the sea. It was beautiful. "I wish we could stay here all day," Thomas wished. "There are so many things to do." The visitors looked out of the windows. Their faces smiled when they saw the blue sea and the golden yellow sand. Suddenly Thomas had an idea. "We will stay here all day," he whistled. The visitors had a lovely time, making sandcastles, riding donkeys, and eating ice creams. Thomas was very happy. "You won't see all the sights eating ice creams," sniffed Gordon. "It's better to see one place properly than lots of places in a hurry," Thomas chuffed happily, and all the visitors agreed. Thomas and the Shooting Star. It was a busy day on the island of Sodor. All the engines were working hard. They wanted to finish their work as quickly as possible. That night, a shooting star was going to flash across the sky. Anyone who saw it could make a wish. None of the engines had ever seen a shooting star before. As the sun started to set, the engines were watching the darkening sky. They were thinking about their wishes. "I'm going to wish to be grander," huffed Gordon. "I'm going to wish to be redder," snorted James. "I'm going to wish to pull the mail forever and ever," peeped Percy happily. Thomas didn't know what to wish for. "Never to have to work with diesel again," he thought. "Or never wearing my snowplough. Or never having to pull smelly fish," he tooted. The Fat Controller arrived with some engineers. "The power station has broken down. There are no lights on the island," he boomed. "Thomas, you must take the engineers to repair it straight away. Be sure to go the quickest way," he added. "Look out for the shooting star, Thomas," peeped Percy. "And remember to make a wish." "I will," whistled Thomas, and he steamed away. The power station was on the far side of the island. Thomas puffed happily along. He made sure to take the quickest way.
But then he came to a long, dark tunnel.
If I go through the tunnel, I won't be able to see the sky. Then I might miss the shooting star, he wished.
So Thomas puffed back up to the junction. And he took a different route.
This isn't the fastest way, he chuffed. But if I puff hard enough, I'll be at the power station just as quickly.
But Thomas wasn't at the power station just as quickly. He was at Henry's forest instead. The trees were tall, and the branches blocked out the sky.
If I go through Henry's forest, he wished, I won't see the shooting star.
So Thomas took a different route. He puffed around Henry's forest. His journey was getting longer and longer. Thomas came to the cutting through Shen Valley. The track through the valley was the fastest way to the power station. But the valley was deep and the cutting very high.
If I go through the cutting, I won't see the shooting star, he wished.
So Thomas backed up and went another way. Thomas's journey was getting even longer, and it was even later. And with no electricity on the island, Sodor was darker than ever. At Tidmouth's sheds, the engines were all still thinking about their wishes. All except Percy. He was worried about his friend.
Thomas should be back by now, he peeped sadly. Where is he?
But the engines didn't know where Thomas was. And neither did Thomas. He could hardly see anything. He didn't know whether to puff left or right or up or down. Now he wasn't thinking about the shooting star. He was thinking about the power station.
If I had taken the quickest way, the lights would be fixed by now, cried Thomas, and I wouldn't be lost. Cinders and ashes. I wish I could see.
Suddenly, something flashed across the night sky. It was the shooting star. It shot across the sky like the brightest rocket that had ever been. It lit up the island from coast to coast. Now Thomas could see the power station.
My wish came true, cried Thomas. Thank you, star.
And he steamed off as fast as he could. Thomas arrived at the power station. The engineers quickly got to work. Soon the power station was fixed and the lights came on all over Sodor. Thomas puffed happily home. He passed through brightly lit stations. As he pulled into Tidmouth, his friends were talking about their wishes. Gordon said he felt grander. James was sure he was redder. Percy was just happy to see his friend.
I wished you would come home safely, he peeped. Thank you, Percy, tooted Thomas. Both of our wishes came true.
He's the cheeky one.
James.
He's vain but lots of fun.
Percy.
Pulls a mail on time.
Gordon.
Thunders down the line.
Emily.
Really knows her stuff.
Henry.
Toots and huffs and puffs.
Edward.
Wants to help and share.